Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Corey Rosen, and you're listening to the Story Podcast. Today, I have on a super awesome guest, Mr. Colt Wilbur. Colt Wilbur is a South Central Pennsylvania based artist operating in country, rock and roll, bluegrass, and folk. The Colt Wilbur Band came to life in 2013 and has been performing all throughout Pennsylvania, Maryland, Tennessee, Florida, and every dive bar and dance hall in between. They've been fortunate enough to share the stage with many national artists and heroes alike, and heading into the 2023 season with a brand new record and their first official music video, pretty big deal, released in March 2023. It, along with 2015's release, Heart of Stone, is available on Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon, and every major streaming platform. Cool. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, Corey. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. So you've you got a band now. I want to know where it all first started for you. When did you when did the music bug bite you?
Oh man, that's kind of tough to say because whenever I was younger, like back in the day, I'm gonna date myself here too. So like back in the day, I'm the youngest of three, and my brother had Napster and Kazaa and all sorts of stuff. And it was the days where you had one computer tower in the house, and you couldn't be on the computer if you were expecting a phone call.
Oh yeah.
Those kind of days. And my brother would download music, and I remember going to sit in front of the computer a lot, and they usually used to have those visual changers. I don't know what they were, but like you turn on a song and then you could hit kind of like a screensaver, if you would. It would just do random stuff to the music. And I remember sitting and just really enjoying music. And I'd always had a Walkman, another thing dating me, and a big case of CDs with all sorts of different stuff, ranging from country to rock and roll to metal. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was really into music when I was younger, and I don't think I started playing guitar till I was probably, I don't know, 11 or 12, maybe at somewhere in there. And then that's when I started really getting into music then.
So what made you pick up a guitar?
I just thought they looked cool, man. And I mean, there was a store on Main Street in Mechanicsburg, and my family has a plumbing and heating business. And as a kid, riding around in the back seat, going up and down Main Street to go to and from our house in this plumbing and heating business, that I'd always pass this music shop, and I'd always remember just looking into the glass window and just seeing all these guitars hanging. And when I got older and I'd stay at my grandma's in town, she would let me go out on my bike or my skateboard or whatever I had. And I'd always find myself in that music store just wandering in. And I know they probably got sick of me because I remember one time getting yelled at because I put fingerprints on a guitar for some
Mm.
reason. But I don't know. I was just really curious. And it was about one of the birthdays. I think I was 10 was whenever I started. Now that I think about it, but it was one of those birthdays you have growing up as a kid where you stop getting presents as toys and you start getting money. It's like, well, what do I do with this? And I think that year I had about $95 that was given to me through my birthday, and I told my parents like I want to get into playing guitar, so they took me there, and um, of course I wanted some, really cool pointy looking guitar that didn't make any sense for me to have, but I ended up getting an acoustic guitar and started from there. So
So where'd you start from? Did you go to lessons or?
I did. I took lessons at that store. It was pretty neat, but I mean, it was also a very classical method. So I was learning out of these what they call the Mel Bay books. So
Mhm.
you were learning how to read music and only going like one string at a time, learning your first chord positions. And me being a little young and naive, I was sitting there, and after a little while of doing it, I became a little discouraged because I was like, man, this is kind of boring. Like I'm listening to AC/DC and Metallica on the way to my lessons, and then learning how to play like Three Wise Men or like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
Wow,
And I'm
crossbuns.
just bummed
Yeah.
out. So I'm like, I want to do what Angus Young's doing. I want to do, that kind of stuff. And so eventually I did quit taking lessons and put the guitar down for a while. And I met some guys later in middle school that were also guitar players. And whenever they started playing songs that I knew. They played riffs and parts of songs that I knew, and I was just really drawn to that. And they explained what guitar tabs were and other things. So I went home, I dusted off the guitar and picked it up again and started playing. And for, I don't know, a couple years there, I taught myself, a lot how to play. And it was just, looking up different songs that you liked, whether it be the solos or riffs or chords. And, the more you spend time doing that, your fingers get stronger, you get familiar with things. It was just a matter of repetition. I mean, I think that you do anything long enough, you get good at it.
Yeah,
So,
right.
but yeah, I got to a point to where I was, you know, doing pretty decent on guitar, and um, then I wanted to take lessons again, but I didn't want to go back to the classical thing, at that point. So I actually found one of your guests you had on, Eric Wersing. He was teaching then in Lemoyne, and Eric is hands down probably one of the best guitar players I've ever just seen in my life. I mean, he's just so talented and so knowledgeable when it comes to music. I mean, and it's not just, right now Eric's performing, as some people may know, in a Rush tribute band. It's called Solar Federation, but Eric is so fluent in so many different genres of, jazz and blues and fusion and, rock. And he was the perfect teacher for me because, like, I came into the first time and sat down with him, and he's like, "So what do you want to learn?" And I'm like, "Well, I kind of like this, and this." And he's like, "Oh, you like Van Halen?" And he would, play Van
Shred Van
Halen. Yeah,
Halen.
like note for note, like perfect. And so we learned a lot of that kind of stuff. But Eric really, I guess, sharpened me, I guess, if you would, as a guitar player. Just learned stuff from him, made it
how
fun.
how long did that last for?
Oh, geez. I don't know, probably 2, 3 years or so. And Eric was, showing me a lot of stuff that I wanted to learn in guitar players, and also expanding my mind in music theory so I could understand how music worked and why
Why it
guys
works?
did what they did and where they did it. Um, yeah, I was with him for about 2, 3 years up through high school, and then um, kind of stopped. I'm not sure looking back then why, but I don't know if Eric moved to another place or what all had happened, but I still keep in touch with Eric, and I know he and Julie are doing well. And I saw him last year at the CPMAs. So, which, by the way, congratulations on
Thank you
your
very
award,
much.
sir.
Thank you very much, man. So, at what point did you start playing guitar, like, start making your own stuff on guitar? Was it during that time, or
Well, growing up, I was in a high school band with just a bunch of friends playing loud music in your parents' basements, that kind of
Of
deal.
course, right.
And we were doing a mixture of rock and metal. And I remember the one time we had a show, and back in those days, if you had a show, you only probably had 2 or 3 years of high school band, and it was a big deal. And I think we had a show doing some benefit somewhere, and our lead singer, one of my best friends, Ryan Sipe, we'll just call him Sippy, that's his nickname. He got grounded for his grades.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so, like, and his dad said,
Like
"Boys,
killjoy.
he can't play music anymore. He has to get his grades up, or he's gonna flunk out of school. You guys gotta do something." And we didn't wanna cancel this show because, like I said, we only had, like, 2 to 3 shows a year. And so we kinda looked amongst ourselves like, "Man, what are we gonna do? We're gonna try to find somebody." And I kinda stuck my hand up and said, "I'll give singing a shot. I've never done it before. I've only ever played guitar." And, but I can't do what he was doing because he was doing a lot of screaming and other kind of things that I've never been able to do. And, so we changed up the set list a little bit, kinda made like a rock set list, and went in and played. And, that really started my mind on, wow, I really enjoy this singing thing and playing guitar too. And then from there, I started kicking around the idea of writing songs and doing stuff like that. I might have been, I don't know, 16, 17 when that happened or so. But yeah.
And so you mentioned yet that around that time you put down the guitar again. Uh, what did you do instead?
Well, it was weird because, like I said, for most of my life up to that point, and especially just even when it came to listening to songs, I was only ever really interested in what the guitar player was doing,
Mhm.
whether it be rock and roll or metal. And I grew up on country music. I mean, in my house, my family played a lot of, I mean, it was the 90s, 2000s. So it was like George Strait, Martina McBride, Brooks and Dunn. Uh,
Revival of country,
yeah.
some might say.
And, I've always loved that stuff. My sister and mom would always tease me that, you should play country. And I was like, those guys just strum chords. Like, that's boring. And
Mm,
when I got into singing,
heresy,
yeah.
almost.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, when I got into singing and I started really looking at some of these songs, and that coupled with my sister bringing around some music and my friends, older brothers bringing around music called Red Dirt, music out of Texas and the
Mhm.
Midwest. It was country music, but it was country music like I've never heard before. Like, it was very original. It wasn't all that repetitive kind of stereotypical stuff that
It
you
wasn't
probably
pop.
hear.
Right.
No, like, it was pretty straight up. And it was neat too because, like, Red Dirt wasn't just one sound or one genre. Like, you could have bands like Jason Boland and the Stragglers, who were like a diehard country band. I mean, they could hold the line with Buck Owens and everybody else. Or you had a band like Cross Canadian Ragweed, who was a rock and roll band. and it was still considered the same genre. It was just, I don't know, this different kind of genre, and that really interested me. But whenever I had found this kind of stuff, that kind of made me start listening to not only the singing, but the lyrics in the song. So
Mm.
I stopped focusing on, going a million miles an hour playing guitar and just, focusing on what songs were about, what songs had to say. I got my first acoustic guitar and I was, doing that whole thing. So in that regard, yeah, I did kind of put down the guitar from a sense of just playing lead and just staying in that little bubble off to the side of the stage and taking on kind of a different role, if you would, or a different avenue of music, I guess.
So did you just decide to do further education, like go to a college for music, or what happened?
Yeah, no, that was something around that time in high school and you're trying to decide what you want to do for the rest of your life and you're going to go to college or if you're not going to go to college. And man, I went to Shippensburg for like half a semester, like just barely long enough to get moved in and say, well, this was fun, then turn around and come back. But it was just something that I figured I'd always kind of do to some capacity on my own. And, if I wanted to learn more about something, I'd go try to find somebody that knew that. Or, I mean,
Mm.
thankfully with the internet, YouTube, and everything else, I mean, you can really learn a lot, about different styles of guitar playing or take lessons from some of the best guitar players in the world or that kind of stuff. And it was just kind of that kind of method of, if I like this style of songwriting, I'm going to listen to this artist and I'm going to check out other artists like this person or maybe who this artist listened to whenever they were growing
Mm.
up. And you kind of get familiar with stuff in that, or at least I have in that way, more so like firsthand experience of just getting down in it instead of just sitting in a class or something.
Right. No, yeah, it's definitely one of the better ways to learn is to get down deep into it
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
So when do you think you started songwriting?
I started that, I don't know, I might have been, it was probably at Shippensburg when I was just out of high school. So I might have been 18. I just started putting songs together and um, it kinda makes me think of a documentary I'd seen with Glenn Fry talking to Bob Seger, and he was asking him, like, "How do you write songs?" And he's like, "Well, you just sit there and you really try it." He said, "Your first songs are gonna suck. Like, there's no way about it. Like, they're gonna be bad." And,
Yes.
um, for me, it was just going through the motions. Like, even if I knew a song was bad as I'm writing it, I'm like, "I have to see this thing through to the end," because if I don't, I'm just hitting nails in halfway, and, what's the
Mhm.
point of that? So I was probably, about 18 or so that I started kicking around different ideas for songs and, um, starting to piece things together. And it was, just like I said earlier, you practice something long enough, you're bound to get decent at it. Not that I think I'm this mind blowing songwriter or anything. I'm a plumber who plays music on the weekends, man.
Right.
But, um, you know, it was one of those things that certainly the more time you invest into it and into the craft, you get better at it. So, and that did come a little more natural. So,
So you went to Shippensburg, dipped your feet in, headed out. What then? You're a plumber now.
yep.
Is that the route you went, or?
Not immediately. So I did a lot of stuff, man. My family's always been very blue collar. I mean, my oldest brother Josh was the first person to ever graduate from a college in our entire family history. So like that was a big deal. And my dad had a plumbing and or still does have a plumbing and heating business based in Mechanicsburg, Jeff Wilbur Plumbing and Heating. And I'd worked there on and off growing up, just doing all sorts of stuff, especially in the summer when school was out. And when I came back from that, I ended up working like in a warehouse doing some jobs. I worked as a butcher for a while. I was a waiter at one place. I worked general construction another place. I lived in Chattanooga, Tennessee for a while. I just kind of bounced around and just kind of felt out, what worked for me then. And then even there was a little while too where I played music full time and, I sustained myself, well enough to get by and do that. But I found with doing music full time, at least to this capacity in Pennsylvania, I had a lot of downtime and I needed something to fill out my spare time. So I do part time jobs, doing whatever. And um, then I just kind of settled into the family business probably 8, 9 years ago. And I honestly do like it, man. I like working with my hands, figuring problems out, that kind of stuff, interacting with people. No 2 days are ever really the same. But yeah.
That's always fun. Uh, I would be a plumber if it weren't for the dirtiness.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some days where you're just like, "Oh my gosh, what am I doing
Yeah,
here?
right.
Why did I do this?"
So you started up your band in 2013, and
Mhm.
what year around? How old were you around then?
I was probably about 20, 21, and the band kinda came around by accident, as a
Did it?
matter of fact. So, it was about that time that I was getting songs together, and I had maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 songs that I felt like, "Alright, these are good enough to at least stick my hand up to the world and say, 'Hi, I play music in the area, and if you like what I do, then you should come see me sometime.'" And I wanted to get them recorded to have a demo to be able to pass out to different venues and places and just try to, get my feet wet. And I went to see Jason Schaefer at Full Tilt in Mechanicsburg, and I went there, and I also at the time was working at a music store, and I went there and I recorded these songs, acoustic and vocals. And he said, "Well, all right, we have this stuff down. What do you want to do?" Because I thought, well, we should try to church this up a little bit, maybe add in some lead stuff here and there, or just accent some things, make it sound a little bigger than just me. And I met a guy at the music store who played drums, and I said, "Hey, you want to come down and do some drum stuff on here?" And he came down and played drums, which I got to commend him. It's recording a record in the entire wrong order. Like we did the
Yeah,
vocals and the
right.
guitars first, and then we added drums to it. But like, he just laid right in there. And did a great job. But he did such a good job that once the drums were in there and you have the guitar and the vocals, it was like, well, now we got to make this sound like a band. So
Gotta redo it all.
we
Yeah.
brought bass in from another friend and brought another person in to do pedal steel, a guy named Henry Casser. Um, and we had this like record. And I talked to these guys back in the music store, and I was like, well, there's this bar up in Duncannon called Tubby's. It burned down now, but I played up there and I was doing some acoustic work, and they said, "Yeah, if you want to release this record up here, then, come play this show." And I had the record, but I was like, "Well, this record sounds like a full band production, but it's just me. Like, I don't have a band. Like, am I just going to
Mhm.
go up there and do these by myself?" And I thought that was kind of goofy. So I turned back to these guys and I was like, "Hey, like, you want to go play a show? Like, you just want to try it out?" And they said, "Yeah." So we got together and learned some all the music off that record, learned some other songs too, and we were trying to come up with a band name. We're like, "What's our band name gonna be?" I'm like, "I don't know." And, the promoter kept getting a hold of us and was like, "Guys, we need a name, we need a name." And eventually they were like, "Dude, it's your music on your record. Let's just call it the Colt Wilbur Band." And I was like, Okay. I mean, if you guys are fine with that, we can do that." And so that's kinda how the band started.
So how'd it go? Where'd you guys go from there?
Yeah, we had a lot of fun, man. I mean, it was a lot of fun. We had a great reception up there, and we got more work out of that. And it was just kind of one of those things where we looked at each other and said, "Man, is it? You want to keep doing this?" And everybody just kind of nodded and said, "Yeah, this is fun." So we booked plenty more shows. I mean, all over the place, and we in those first couple of years did like a battle of the bands thing at the Hard Rock out of Baltimore and won that. Um,
Really? What
yeah,
was
that
that
was
like?
that was cool, man. So, yeah, we played down at the Hard Rock at Inner Harbor, and, it was all different genres. So, like and a lot of the bands, especially with it just being a hard rock bar to begin with, like, there were rock bands and everything, then here were, like, these country guys
Country
walking in, we're like, "Hey, what's
country
up,
hicks running
fellas?" Yeah,
around.
and, like, I'm pretty sure one of the bands that was competing with us that night, like, in this green room area they partitioned off in the restaurant, like, they're putting on eye makeup and other stuff, and we're just kinda standing there like, "Are we
With your cowboy
yeah,
hats
did
and your
did we
boots.
did
Yep.
we sign up for the right thing,
Right.
boys? Like, what are we doing?" And, yeah, we ended up winning that. It was kinda crazy, but we, also did some other competition-based stuff. There was this thing called the American Country Star Competition. I guess it was kinda like some American Idol-based Nashville thing. We went down and did that. We got 2nd in that Nashville. Um, and we just did some traveling and playing music, all over the place, man. That's where we played in, Tennessee, down on Broadway quite a bit. We played, in Maryland. We played all over Pennsylvania. Um, gosh. Like the Reverb in Reading, Croc Rock, Blarney's, which that bar changed, like, names 15 times, but, everywhere, really. I mean, we were busy a lot, so
And so how long did that last till? Are you still doing that now, or is that
yeah, so, we've still been doing pretty much a lot of the same stuff we've always ever been doing, just playing shows where, people hire us and where we go. And we did release another record back in 2015, and through the years, members have come and gone, but um, we released a record called Heart of Stone back in 2015, and that was neat for me because, I mean, I've only ever been used to playing live. Then if you go to a studio, man, it's a whole different type of performing, and it's a whole different you're really under a microscope kinda deal. Live, if something gets messed up, you just kinda brush it under the table, and you might be
No
the
one
only
will notice
person.
anyway. Yeah.
Right. But in a studio setting, I mean, you are under a microscope. I mean, every little thing. And, you know, going into that record, it was like, okay, well, now we get to do a record right because last time we recorded it backwards and all sorts of, you know, and we recorded that record as well at Full Tilt with Jason Schaefer. And that was I'm really happy how that record came out. That was a great record, great performances all on it by all the members alike. And that led us up to, 5 to actually, no, 7 years later, we did another one. So, yeah.
So tell me, I mean, you've released 3 records, and a lot of time between each of them.
Mhm.
How have you seen your songwriting grow?
Yeah, it's funny because I kinda I thought I'd seen something once with Sturgill Simpson talking about that, and I didn't know what he meant when had read that, but I related to it the older I got, and he was speaking about releasing his first couple records, and, Sturgill didn't start his career till he was in his mid, late 30s, and he wrote and did a couple records, and he kind of came to a pause, and, he was talking about how, well, I had to live life because I had to get experiences, and I could
Mm,
see, like, my songwriting kinda mature because being a young kid, I look back at some of the songs, and some I just get embarrassed to even hear. I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And then as I gotten older, I think I've grown a little bit, have some life experience that I can really put into some songs that, other people can relate to or seem to enjoy, and, that's certainly helped a lot. It makes things more relatable, and, uh so in that regard, I'd think that music became a little more relatable and more mature as I've gotten older and just had life happen to me, so
so we have a few of your songs here today. I would like to play a few of them. What
yeah.
song do you wanna go for first?
Let's do Pretty Big Deal there, I guess, the title cut off this newest record.
So tell me about it.
Yeah, so Pretty Big Deal, this was a song that I've had in my head, the idea at least, for a couple years, and it was something that holds a lot of personal things within my life to it. One thing I was talking about earlier was our family being blue collar, but another thing about my family is we're all kind of dirt track racers, if you would. So, my grandfather back in the 60s, Bob Wilbur, he raced at Silver Spring Speedway, and he raced this old Chrysler, and it was black, or I'm told it was like a dark blue by my dad, or varying people say black or blue, but he raced back in the 60s. He was a track champion for 2 years. My uncle Steve raced most of my life and still is racing. Pretty sure he's racing tonight somewhere. And then my brother and I raced. So, I mean, it was one of those things that racing has always been intertwined within my family's kind of history. And growing up, I really took pride in that because, there is, I think, a racing community and, people that really are a fan of that kind of stuff. And I mean, it might not seem as prevalent right now because technology kind of boomed, but like I'm talking to maybe the folks that were born and grew up pre-technology to where like, the racetrack was a pretty big thing back then. And I got stopped so many times growing up being like, "You're a Wilbur boy, aren't you? You're Bob Wilbur's this, or you're Steve Wilbur's this, or you're Jeff Wilbur's this." And it was one of those things I had taken pride in. And but at the same time I realized like, man, I might be the only person that thinks that's cool, but to me it's a pretty big deal. So that kind of came that idea. um, there's also parts in there about my dad, and I just look up to my dad so much in so many ways. Um, and he always made time for all of us growing up and, doing things like fishing and hunting and, being at every sporting event while running a business and raising a family. I mean, and I've always really valued that. So there's, some references to that in there about he and I going fishing, and the one year we made the paper, uh, which that sounds like the most, like, country thing ever, like, "I was in the paper for catching a fish," and, like, and there's a little bit in there too about my personal life, but, I stopped, drinking 2 years ago, or it'll be 2 years here in August, but I put a little bit of that in there and just coming back to, these are things that might not seem like much to other people. It might not be that relatable to other people, but to me, they're a pretty big deal. And that's kind of how the song came about.
Well, let's give it a listen. This is Pretty Big Deal by the Colt Wilbur Band.
You could hear the roar from miles around, through the tall cornfields to the square in town, the rumbling dirt and bored out steel. Pat raced a Chrysler, a black 59, track champ at 68 and 69. It never stood a chance when he was behind the wheel. It may not seem like much, but it's a pretty big deal. It's okay to own a mansion and drive a fancy car, but you can't buy the little things that make us who we are. I stumbled on a picture that was packed away of me and Dad fishing on opening day. We made the front page of the paper that year, tying up flies on the back of his truck. He never let it show when I got one stuck. He'd hook up a trout and always pass the reel. It may not seem like much, but it's a pretty big deal. It's okay to own a mansion and drive a fancy car, but you can't buy the little things that make us who we are. Once was a man who got a little off track. The weight of the world carried on his back. He picked himself up and he put that bottle down. I've been thinking about a woman and a couple of kids, taking them fishing like my daddy did. The things I've been missing don't change the way I feel. It may not seem like much, but it's a pretty big deal. It's okay to own a mansion and drive a fancy car, but you can't buy the little things that make us who we are.
So another thing that was a pretty big deal for you on this was that it's your first official music video.
Yeah. Yeah. It was kind of funny how that came about, because that wasn't ever really on the docket, so to speak, for the release of the record. Originally, whenever we had gone in to do this record, we anticipated releasing it in the fall of 2022, pre-holiday season of everything. And, life happens, and, deadlines get shifted this way or that. And especially with something as personal as music, you don't never really want to put a deadline or pressure on that. And, you fight to make things as best as you can. And we had everything done around early October, but we decided to wait till the new year to release it. Um, and that gave us plenty of time, between beginning of October up till, and we didn't even have a date in the new year when we wanted to release it yet. But I just thought, man, we're gonna have, all this music ready, just sitting here. We're not gonna release it for like 6 months or so because you don't want to really try to compete with Thanksgiving and Christmas and all this stuff. And the thing you really don't want to see happen as a band or as an artist is you release music at an inopportune time and it just kind of gets swept under the rug and people don't
Mhm.
care or um, just have too much going on to where they really can't, see what's going on with you. But yeah, so I was thinking about it, and I knew I wanted to release at least a single or two leading up to the full album release. And I thought, well, let's look into maybe doing a video. And I didn't know who to talk to, so I hit up Logan Sumi over at Rock Mill Industries because I knew they had a video department. And Logan said, "Yeah, we used to do that, but we don't really focus on that end of the business anymore. But I really recommend this guy named Josh West."
Mm.
And so I looked up Josh, and he has a company called J Ball Productions. Um, and his portfolio is amazing, and I was a little concerned at first because Josh's portfolio was mainly metal bands, like pretty hard metal bands, like the stuff I used to listen to growing up, and I was like, "This stuff's really cool, but, um, I wonder how we're gonna
What's it
do
gonna
country."
translate? Yeah.
Yeah, so but Josh was super cool because, he didn't blindly just accept the work, like, he
Right.
wasn't just like, "Yeah, I'll take your money and whatever you wanna do, and I'll do whatever you want," like, he asked that we talk on the phone first and just kind of feel each other out, so I could see if he and I jive together and vice versa. And for him, from an artistic expression, if this seems like a project that he's going to find exciting and can do a way that
Right.
he'd be excited about too. And I don't know, we talked on the phone for about an hour and we didn't even know what song we wanted to do. We were just talking about like, hey man, I got 14 songs on a new record. I really think that I'd like to do a video of one of these songs. I just don't know which one.
Mhm.
And I told him about Pretty Big Deal just like I did, just now with you, and, Josh was, really, really eager to do something with that. He said because he said, "I feel there's a story there." He said, "The best thing we can do with a video is tell a good
Tell story.
story in a visual perspective,"
Right.
and, Josh really did a great job with that. I mean, not only the shooting of everything, but we also put in some clips there of, uh racing from my grandfather from back in the '60s, which I didn't even know existed.
Oh, wow.
Um, we were talking about shots of everything, and he said, "Do you have any home videos or anything like that, maybe of him racing?" And I thought, "Gosh, like, you're talking about the mid '60s, late '60s. Like, who's going to be carrying around a video camera in that time period? And if you do, like, what quality of footage are you going to have? Because you're talking about like, the 8 millimeter,
Right.
kind of footage." And uh, we found some, and I mean that was really special because that to see, like, my grandfather actually racing this car that I've grown up seeing in so many pictures and paintings and, there's little models that people made and, to see him actually doing that, it was just kinda one of those take your breath away moments, and, so we got to put some of that there coupled with some other home video footage that kinda tie into the song, and Josh just did an outstanding job. He really couldn't have done any better of a job, and, I hope to work with Josh again here in the future on some other work as well.
So, that's what other songs would you wanna turn into music videos, do you think?
That's tough. I'd sent a couple to Josh, and again, Josh got excited because we do have a couple story-oriented songs, on the record. And one song's about a guy whose family gets mistreated working for a coal company, and kind of back in the days where you didn't get paid in money, you got paid in credit from the company. You could spend that at the store, and
Which is also owned by the company, so
right.
yep.
So I mean, it was kind of like the biggest Ponzi pyramid scheme ever,
Yeah,
but
Big
like
Banana Republics, yep.
yeah, so, there was a story about that, how this guy's dad dies, they throw his family out, and he grows up, gets older, comes back and works for the company, gets this manager kind of that fired his dad way back in the day and set his family out, gets this manager to himself, and he kills him. So, yeah,
Is that a true
um,
story or is that a story you made up?
that was one actually, I can't claim 100% credit to that one. That was a song that my guitar player, Ronnie Rhodes, had written back in the '90s. He recorded it. And I was always obsessed with that song just because I thought it's neat, you don't hear songs like that,
Right.
and I know it sounds dark and morbid as all get out when we
That's
say it like
country.
that, but
That's
yeah. So, I mean, he said, "I'd really like to hear your voice on this song," and we ended up taking it, and it didn't have a chorus at the time, so we wrote a chorus for it and put it together, and Josh really liked that. There's also another song on there called Becky and Paco that it's funny because that is not country at all like that song. If anything, it kinda sounds like Austin Powers, like, man,
Really?
like 60s Man of Mystery kinda stuff. There's some surf rock vibes in there, and there's a kind of a funny backwoods Louisiana hick story in that one that's kinda unique, and so I really don't know if we were to do another one because there's so many options to choose from, but, like, those 2 would be leading candidates. There's another one about, like, an outlaw kind of group of guys, and you and your buddies are outlaws, and these guys are getting ran down by, um, I guess, US Marshals and that kinda stuff, so that could be a fun story.
Is that Living on the Run?
Yep, that is Living on the Run.
Tell me about that one and the running process for that.
Yeah, so the record, as a whole, I guess, this would kind of explain how we did the whole record too. So, at the end of 2021, I guess it would have been, yeah, we were I was sitting at Ronnie's house in Big Riff Studios in Mechanicsburg, and we were talking about the upcoming year and just kinda looking on the previous year we just had, and we were just thinking about, what do we wanna do? Like, what direction do we feel we're going? And we've been really wanting to do original material again because like you said, it'd been a long time, and, we just felt like it was something we really needed to do. We thought this will be good for us, this will be good for the band. Let's start the first Monday of 2022. We're gonna get together twice a week. We're gonna write 2 songs a week, and we're just gonna write as many songs as we can so we kinda
See what
have.
cuts.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna write, and I don't think we set a cap on that. I think, we kinda both understood if we had 16 to 20 songs written, then out of those 16 or 20, we're gonna choose the best, whatever we wanna record, and really focus our energy on that. So, Ronnie, um, is an amazing, amazing guitar player, and he has done so much throughout his life. Back in the '90s, he was on a national tour with an artist named Michelle Wright, and he was touring all over the US and lived in Nashville and, lived in California at that time. So he really did the real deal thing. And, owning a studio as well. I mean, he's always working, playing guitar, and he had a couple song that he had over the years that he wanted to bring up for consideration. And we essentially would just get together, once a week or twice a week, I'm sorry, and each guy was kind of responsible for their idea. Or sometimes you could have a full song written, sometimes it would just be what we call like a seed, just a concept or an idea for a song. And if we liked the way the seed or idea felt, then we both dive in right there and write the whole thing out. And we never really focused on, oh, this album has to have this many style songs or we have to have this sound or anything. It was just we like all these different things about music, and we're just going to try to write the best songs that we like that we can. And that's kind of how we approached it. So whenever it came to Living on the Run, I had this guitar riff that I did on an acoustic guitar that Ronnie really liked. And he brought up, some drum programs and everything. And we just listened to the guitar riff against the drums. And I'm like, what do you feel when you hear this? And he said, I kind of feel like an outlawish, cowboy kind of song kind of deal. And I'm like, I kind of have that same feeling too.
The same I was listening to it sounds like a train song, like an
Right.
old
Yeah.
Johnny Cash train song.
Exactly. So, that really, birthed that kind of idea for that song. And, it's funny how songs like that can happen because we've written songs starting with a lyric or a phrase, or sometimes you have a piece of music, a chord progression, or maybe a guitar riff that inspires a certain feeling or direction. And there's really not a set way that we ever did that, but that's how that song came about along with all the other songs. It just came with, hey man, do you have an idea? Or what's your idea this week? And then we run with that. And that's how we did the whole record pretty much.
Well, we're gonna take a listen to "Living on the Run," and that is by the Colt Wilbur Band.
Yeah.
Well, we gotta keep moving if you want to stay alive. Make it to the river while we still got the light. We started with 5, now we're down to 3. That lawman's got a poster with a picture of me. He'd sure like to see me swing. For all the things I've done, guess that's a price you pay. living on the run. That man we left for dead down in Abilene looked like he had plenty and the times were lean. Mr. handed over, he said, "You want to dance?" That's when he pulled that 45, he never stood a chance. I could hear them cross the plains. They got us 10-1. Guess that's the price you pay. Living on the run. I know they're coming for me. Yeah, they got me on the run. This ain't my first time on the wrong side of a gun. He said, "Walk out slow with your hands held high, or this godforsaken dirt is where you're gonna die. We're all boxed in from every side. Boys, we got a choice and a minute to decide." I turn back to my friends. You know we've had our fun, and that's the price we pay. Living on the run. Living on the run. Living on the run.
And that was Living on the Run by the Colt Wilbur Band. So tell me, what's next for you guys? You just released this record. What's coming up for you?
Well, April is going to be a month of acoustic shows, and I'm playing tonight, as a matter of fact, at the Blue Sky Tavern with Ronnie. It's going to be a nice duo show. I'm also going to be at Flinchie's this month, and there's going to be a great benefit for Leukemia Lymphoma Society that's going to be happening in Mechanicsburg. But as a year on the whole, I mean, it's going to be a lot of the same old, same old. We're just a blue collar band playing all over the place and having fun and liking to meet people. So if you guys are free, come on out to a show.
And you can find that schedule, I'm sure, on your new website.
Yeah. So we have everything, published on our website as far as scheduling. But just this year, we launched our first official store, if you would. And there we have all of our merchandise available. We have our hard CDs for Heart of Stone, pretty big deal. And we got some other merch that's going to be coming out through the summer season of everything here too. So, if you want to have some Colt Wilbur swag, I guess Colt Wilbur band swag, and check out our website, coltwilbur.com.
And we're going to go into a time of just general questions I like to ask all my guests. If you have a question for Colt, be sure to leave it in the comments and we'll definitely get around to it. So I got to know, what are some of it, you have lived a lot of life in between your first beginning and even your midpoint with 2015 and now. What is one thing that you wish you knew when you first started?
Man, that's a deep question. I don't know. I'd probably just say that, stick true to yourself and what you really love about music. I've seen time and time again, in country especially, because that kind of became cool again, I want to say, in the 2010-ish era. And, it seemed like whenever that trend came out and things became, pretty poppy, everybody was jumping to country music, which, is neat to see country, get that attention. But everybody was trying to sound like the guy who was a hit on the radio, and then that guy would die out, and then something else would come along. Then everybody was trying to sound like that guy. It's like, as an artist, your biggest thing you should try to focus on, I feel anyhow, is being the best version of you, whatever that looks like. Like, don't go try to sound like this person. We already have this person, and
Yes,
that person sounds like that. So, like, be
absolutely.
you. We don't have that yet.
No, absolutely. That's a total common theme on this podcast. Is the best way to do music is to be you. You don't want to be anybody else. You want to be Colt Wilbur. There's already the Florida Georgia Line. There's already
Yeah.
whatever other music, whatever that you can name any of them. There's already that, and they're
Yep.
probably the best that's ever gonna be.
Right.
And you never become number one if you're following number one,
Right.
right? You're always following. If you're gonna do your own thing, you'll probably get recognized for doing your own thing.
Right. Absolutely right. I mean, you know, you don't go out and try to reinvent the wheel. Like the wheel's been pretty good for a while. We don't need another one. You know?
Yeah, go out and invent hover technology.
Yeah.
Do that instead.
Yeah. Be that guy.
So, what is one of the best pieces of advice that you've ever been given, or that you would? Well, I guess we kind of gave an advice,
Yeah.
but what's one of the best pieces you've ever been given?
Yeah. I'd probably say, like I guess what we were just talking about is just, stay grounded and true to yourself. What's that old saying? To thine own self be true.
Mm,
And, I think you're gonna really appreciate what you end up producing as, a result of that. But, especially as you get older, there's so much value and peace of mind and, being able to sleep easy at night, and feeling good about, what you're doing with your life and who's around you in your life. And, if you're true to yourself and, how you go through your life and the decisions you make, I think that's worth its weight in gold to do.
We have a question from, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name. This is from Debbie Cassatt. Who is your favorite country music artist?
Ooh, that's tricky. I have plenty of people I like for several reasons.
I was about to say, yeah.
I there's one guy that I really like out of Kentucky. He's had a long, long career. He's still performing. I think he just played the Sellersville Theater not too long ago. His name's
Mhm.
Chris Knight. Um, Chris has been a singer-songwriter for, gosh, probably the last 25, 30 years, and he writes some of the best songs that I've personally ever heard, or just that I really like. And I like it because it's not predictable, stereotypical, country like, "I'm down with my blue jeans in the moonlight, and I'm feeling just right
It's
with a
not the
Bud Light."
stereotype.
It's
Yep.
nothing like that. It's very unique storytelling and really pulls you in. He has so many different songs, and his voice is very unique. Um, so I really, really like Chris Knight. There's other people I like for their guitar abilities. Like I've always loved Brad Paisley because he's an outstanding country guitar
Love,
player.
love Brad Pitt.
Um, it just depends. Or like, Southern Rock, Blackberry Smoke's a huge one for me. But I'm also a metalhead too, man. Just from growing up, like I love James Hetfield and Metallica.
Right.
It's just how I'm feeling. You know,
Uh, Here's a question: If you would you ever be interested in smashing the genres of metal and country together?
yeah, that'd be really cool. I mean, I can say I've kind of seen that happen before. There's a guy actually, his name's Hank Three, and people might be familiar with him from Hank Williams Jr. or
I
Hank
was gonna
Williams
say, yeah.
Sr. It's their grandson or his son.
Really, that's cool.
Yeah, and Hank 3, he's always been really cool because he played metal growing up, and he's just a really, really big fan of music of any kind. He loves punk and metal, and he kind of created his own genre. And I mean, they call it like a hellbilly genre, but it's a mixture of like
That's so funny.
metal, punk, straight up country music, and it's just, some of it can get pretty aggressive, some of it's pretty traditional, but it's all over the place. But it's definitely a very unique sound, so yeah.
Okay, so we have another question from Kristen. I'm sorry if I mess up this name as well. Shavert.
Okay.
Kristen Shavert. What is your favorite song to play?
Ooh, that's tough. Right now, with a new record out, we're slowly adding those songs to our repertoire to play at
Mhm.
shows, but I really enjoy playing Stone Cold quite a bit. I think that song really came together nicely in the studio. It translated well with the band. And it's exciting for us because it's a new song and it's a new song of ours, but I'm really happy with how that registers, and it feels good too because the times we've played it since the record came out, it shows you can see the crowd response to it. And, whether it be somebody getting up out of their chair and dancing, or, you see somebody intently watching, or they might, if they're still hanging around, they might come up and say, "Hey, what was that song?" Or, so that one's been a favorite of mine to play at the shows as of late.
I think someone is calling you out.
Oh, yeah?
Kathy Wolf, are you ever gonna finish Rhiannon? That one,
Rhiannon.
Rhiannon.
Yeah. We do this instrumental, called Nervous Breakdown. It's a Brad Paisley instrumental, and, we started out with kind of the, um, Deliverance kind of banjo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then, I kinda go off track and I play Rhiannon by Fleetwood Mac, just the intro of that, and, I know Kathy's a big Fleetwood Mac, Stevie Nicks fan. I am too, but, as soon as you start that guitar riff, people start cheering real loud, so I know she wants to hear the rest of it, but I don't know if I could pull off Stevie, Kathy, I'm sorry. We'll
So,
see.
one of the other questions, and we're gonna get to Stone Cold, soon. What are Another question that I like to have is, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you've made maybe as a musician, and how can we curb that for the future generations?
Ooh. I think one of the mistakes that I've made any more than something I wish looking back on the last 10 or 11 years, gosh, how long has it been? That's what happens when you get old, man. Um, is that, there certainly has been a break in time from records coming out. I did that first one, The Reckoning, back in 2013. The next one came out 2015, which, 2-year gap, not too bad. And then this last one came out, some 7 years later. And, life was, all sorts of different, growing up in my 20s. And
Mhm.
um, I really would have liked to have probably put out either this record or even another record, in that time, so there wasn't so much of a lull. So I'd especially say if you're really focused on building a career in the original music scene, and you really got to be on it, so to speak, and keeping your material out there and relevant, and promoting
Circulating.
yourself and circulating material to keep audiences interested. And I mean, we've been lucky in that regard. We've had great support with our shows and all of our music. And, I've really been thankful for that. People have been really kind to us.
So we have a few more questions here. We have one from Diane. Who has influenced you the most in terms of music?
Oh, wow. That's tough. I mean, I think when it comes to, music, I often think about my grandma. Her name's Joanne Wilbur, and she played a piano, and she supposedly used to play an accordion too. I never got to see her do that, but when I was a kid, I remember she had one of those Yamaha pianos, and it was neat because it had the keys that would light up. Like you could say, "Hey, play this song," and the keys would light up.
Oh, that's
So if you
cool.
were trying to learn, you could say, "Oh, I need to press this key because it's red," instead of
That's
white.
really
And
cool.
she would play music and have a good time dancing and making us laugh. And my uncle would tell me sometimes, and some of my other family members, that like, man, she would just, if we're out at a show, they're like, man, she would just love this if she was here or could be here. I thought, yeah, that'd be cool. So um, I'd say influence wise, my family really do a great deal to influence me, especially with writing, and my close friends. Musically, gosh, that could be anything. When it comes to country music, I just really like music that doesn't really follow that formula of, we're going to try to, hit a
Yeah,
demographic
it's like we're not trying to make a
or
hit, we're
set it
just trying to make
right.
music.
Yeah. I really like the stuff to where you can tell it's just a group of people or a singer songwriter just making the music that makes sense to them. And I think that's always been pretty easy to spot versus, somebody who just
We're
wants
just trying to
to
make a hit.
be in an ad for Chevrolet,
Yeah.
so that
So,
kind of stuff.
you've been writing a lot of story-driven music. Is that kind of the path you think you're gonna go down? And you mentioned about, having so much of a gap between releases. Are you working on something new, or
I think for this year, I mean, I'm not saying I'm not gonna be writing this year, but, we're certainly going to be performing and pushing the new record.
Mhm.
Um, it's funny as this whole past year, I've been listening to a lot of different genres, 70s being one big one. So I've been listening to a lot of bands like Head East and Jackson Browne, the Eagles, the Cars, um, and, a lot of singer-songwriters too, like almost folk-like. So anything from like Jim Croce, Gordon Lightfoot, Townes Van Zandt, Blaze Foley. I think it'd be really neat to do like a broken down singer-songwriter acoustic style record.
Mm,
I think that'd be a fun project to undertake because you get to present music in a whole different way. You're not focusing on making things necessarily big and boomy with a full band production, but you still want to sound full, and there's ways to do that. But I really think it really highlights details in those kinds of presentations. So that'd be pretty neat to do at some point.
Well, if you want to follow Colt and all of his antics, you can go over to coltwilbur.com.
Yep.
Check him out there. And this has been the Story Podcast. Don't go yet. We're going to still listen to Stone Cold in a bit, but we just got to do our outro first. So my name is Corey Rosen. This is the Story Podcast. If you want to help support this show and you like what I do, please be sure to share, like, follow, subscribe. It really does help out. And what you can do if you want to find out more about me and the work that I do, you can go over to CoreyRosenProductions.com. That's CORYROSEN Productions.com. You can find out about all of my original work as well as the stuff I do on the podcast and all 149 episodes beforehand upcoming. This Monday, we have Amber Nadine. She is a credible acoustic act from around the area. And Tuesday we have Cody Smith, who is a choreographer, because we like to delve into all sorts of aspects into the music industry. He is a performer, director, choreographer. He works at the college here and has worked in a lot of spaces. He's been on Broadway, etc., etc., etc. He's a very accomplished dude. And then this Saturday we have Home is Where the Art Is, which is a project run by Amber Nadine, who wants to create a song cycle space, a space for musicians to connect, kind of what I'm doing, but in a physical space with multiple people. So I'm really excited to talk to her about all of that. And if you want to be a part of what we're doing, we are ramping up production on our Songwriter Studio, which is a show where we're bring 3 to 4 other artists in the area, and we're gonna cram them in here, and we're gonna force them to write a song within an hour.
Ooh,
Yeah,
that'd be fun.
nice little challenge, nice little drama TV reality thing. So I'm really excited to get that started. So if you want to be a part of that, that's on the website. We are also ramping up our single reviews and album reviews, where we select singles, 3 singles from the community at random, and I'll have another co-host, another random artist in the area. We'll go through, we'll provide constructive criticism for your singles or your album, and you can also you can submit that through the website as well. Just gives you a nice little playtime and gives a little bit of thought from other experienced musicians in the area. With all that said, we're gonna get to Stone Cold. Tell me about Stone Cold.
Yep, Stone Cold's that nice family happy tale about back in the days of, wherever you worked for a coal company or mining. I know people in Kentucky can probably relate to that. You worked for the company and you got paid in company, credits that you spent at a company store. You were kind of, in a slave-like setting almost.
It's imagine if Amazon owned a town today and every single utility was run by Amazon, every single house was run by Amazon.
Yep.
Yeah, what is those corporate towns that they used to call them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I used to be upstate, up northern PA too with
Yeah.
coal mines.
Oh yeah. Yep. And so this takes the premise of that, and this family had a father who worked in one of these towns like that. He ended up passing away from actually, getting sick from coal mining, black lung. And once you're not working for the company, you're living in their housing, you're worthless. So they kick you out. And it takes place from the perspective of one of the children of this family, watching his mother work hard and trying to raise them, and how much animosity he had for this guy that owned this coal operation. So he grows up and ends up going back there, gets a job there, and he's getting a tour of the mine by this guy, and he ends up hitting over the back of the head with a shovel. And yeah, you'll hear the rest. But it's a nice Sunday Easter song. So hope nice you guys Sundays. Enjoy this.
But that said, this is Colt Wilbur, Stone Cold.
Daddy was an old miner with lungs as black as coal. He'd load 16 tons every day before he headed home to that one-room shack that sat up on the hill. Every penny that he earned went to pay that company bill. Stone cold. Mama's in the kitchen, tried to feed the family. 4 brothers and 2 sisters without enough to eat. She said, I'm sorry, you're still hungry. There just isn't any more. Your daddy's out of credit at the company store. Stone cold. Don't go digging in the county town. Stay out of that mine, ain't no telling what you'll find. Some stories are better left untold. Stone Cold. 20 years of mining finally took my daddy's life. 4 brothers and 2 sisters, a lost and lonely wife. I stood before that boss man with a letter in his hand. You got 48 hours to get off of my land. Stone Cold. Grew up too fast and got a job to feed the family. I moved away and that was that, but nothing's as it seems. Well, I went back down with a hard hat and a shovel in my hand. A help wanted sign, I got in line, said, Mister, I'm your man. Stone Cold. Don't go digging in the ground beneath that Harlan County town. Stay out of that mine, ain't no telling what you'll find. Some stories are better left untold. Stone Cold. Took me down old number 1 and started showing me around. When a blow from my shovel knocked that boss man to the ground. Then I carved my daddy's name into his no-good sweaty brow. And I kicked him down a hole so deep he never would be found. Stone Cold. For months and months the town was full of all men snooping around. One by one, till they were done, they sat those miners down. You know, a coal mine throws an echo for miles beneath the ground. Though he begged and pleaded for his life, nobody heard a sound. Don't go digging in the ground beneath that Harlan County town. Stay out of that mine, ain't no telling what you'll find. Some stories are better left untold. Don't go digging in the ground beneath that Harlan County town. Stay out of that mine, ain't no telling what you'll find. Some stories are better left untold. Stone Cold. Stone Cold.